We're a little late. We said 7-ish. We're close. Thanks for waiting. Good to see everybody. And we are going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, so please join me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, on to our consent agenda. We have warrants, which were in the packet. We have the acknowledgement that we reviewed and continued non-disclosure of executive session minutes from February 13th. And we have the Ask Me contract. The MOA is in the packet. There are a couple of small language tweaks that we discussed in executive session. So we'll be voting on that as amended, and that will get retroactively added to the packet if approved here under the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Second, thank you. Any comments or questions on that? Okay, all in favor? We have to do roll call. Ming Chen.
Aye.
Valerie.
Aye.
I'm an aye. Sean.
Aye.
Gloria.
Aye.
All right, that's approved. Thank you. We are on to public comment. If anyone in the room or anyone on Zoom has anything for public comment that's not, I think everyone in the room is for an agenda item or here to watch. So, but if you're not, come to the table, and same on Zoom. Raise your hand on Zoom if you have anything for public comment. Okay, seeing nothing for public comment, we can go on to our informational updates, and we'll start with the superintendent and assistant superintendent updates.
Well, it's a little deja vu because last meeting there were questions about the weather for the next day, and this is a little bit different. So I will say, for anybody paying attention and watching right now, and I will tell all the students right now, you'll know first, we are going to have an early release. If not, a cancellation. So we are going to plan for an early release. So at 7:15, that's going to go out. People's phones might start ringing. We're going to plan for an early release, a regular early release. Following that, I thought that would be more helpful for families to just know we're following that regular schedule. If for some reason things change in the morning, early in the morning, I will let folks know if it's not advisable for us to have school at all. But that's what we will plan for. So last time, Magna, you got really excited that you guys knew first. So I'm telling all of you who are here as well that that's at least the plan for tomorrow. Last Thursday, we had the SMMA feedback session, which we get a lot of interesting information. They're taking all of that feedback from the Mentimeter, and they're going to compile that and help. I think that will also be included in their report. We'll post the recording of it for people to enjoy as soon as that's available to us.
I see it is now on the WestfordCAT
It is
YouTube page.
up now.
Yeah, I
Okay,
checked
good.
right before the meeting.
Okay, good. So it is already up on WestfordCAT. Excellent. It's the season for guest readers at a lot of our elementary schools. So I think some of you might have received invitations to go in and read. I know Dr. Cleary and I are both doing that a couple of times in the next couple of weeks, which is always exciting. That's lots of fun. It's actually, it's more stressful trying to pick the book, than actually visit with the students, because you're like, oh my gosh, what? And then the different ages and figuring out what might be most enjoyable. Interestingly, this Friday and Saturday, the MIAA is holding their Addressing Hate in School Sports regional trainings that they've developed with the Attorney General's office as well too. And so I'll be attending that along with Principal Antonelli and our athletic director, Jeff Bunyan. They're happening all over the state over the weekends, over the next couple of weeks. I'll be very interested to see what it is that they're going to have to say, because I feel like the work that Mr. Bunyan has been doing specifically with the Dual County League, they've been really proactive in trying to establish a lot of different workshops and communication between captains and teams, which I think has been effective. So I think that the Attorney General's office and the MIAA are looking at ideas like that. So it'll be interesting to see what they have to say. And then the last update that I had, that some of you were a part of, and maybe it was one of your updates as well too, so I apologize if I'm stealing thunder, but the day school mural reveal was awesome. When was that? Last Friday?
I'm not going to know that.
Yeah, okay. So it was last Friday.
I was there, but I don't.
Yeah.
Was it last
Was it
2
Friday?
Fridays
No.
ago.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was the
March
week
3rd.
before last, right?
Oh my gosh, okay, you're right, thank you. So the day school, with support from WEF, they brought in a local artist who his studio's in Boston, but he actually does different murals and art installations all over the country, and he has sent his work all over the world. And he worked with the students at the day school with their core values, with the spirit core values, and he took their work and actually created this really beautiful mural right inside the day school as you walk into the building. And so that was great to just participate in the assembly, talking about the work that they did, and then to be there and watch all the students see their work then on the walls was fantastic. So that's the end of my update. Did you have anything?
I just want to say thank you to Valerie, who will be joining the advisory committee for the Nabnasset School Principal Search. We are meeting this week, and then we'll start interviews next week, so we may have finalists to be named at the next school committee meeting, somewhere around there. And I also just want to update you, if you recall this year, we have a small committee of hiring managers who's being trained by Lawrence Alexander on inclusive hiring practices. And Friday, we had our second to last session with him, and there's lots of homework to be done in between, and it's exciting work. So at some point within the next couple of school committee meetings, I think either all of the members or some of the members of that group should come and present to you kind of what we've done throughout the year and what shifts will be made as we think about hiring moving forward. It's exciting work.
Be great, thanks. Okay, thank you for those. School committee updates. I'm going to start with just informationally, and also it's important for the committee to know that we will be meeting jointly with the select board on Tuesday the 28th, so the day after our next meeting, in order to appoint board members or committee members for Neshoba Valley Technical High School School Committee. Right, that's a responsibility that we do jointly with the select board, and then just to let the public know that if somebody has an interest in that and serving on that school committee, that is, like we just said, that gets appointed, and you can submit your name for consideration, I believe, using the citizen activity interest form on the town website, just like you would on any of the other appointed committees in the town. And so what?
I'm just getting a phone call.
Probably from the schools.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
7:15.
All right, am I getting one too?
Yeah.
I'm getting one.
Okay, there we go. That's him. And so if that's something of interest, check that out. I know former Westford School Committee member Alicia Mallon, who's now on the Neshoba Valley School Committee, she has indicated that she'd be happy to speak with people who might be interested in doing something like that. I'll say it's appointed, not elected, so you don't have to have lawn signs, and I would say you don't have to do a full campaign. You kicking yourself, Bill? Like what? And so anyway, so for the committee, put that on the calendar for the evening of the Tuesday, the 28th. Other committee updates?
Finance subcommittee met last week, and it was the day after our joint meeting with Select Board and FinCom to have our officially finalized balanced budget. meeting the town allocation and all the same number. So the finance subcommittee walked through with Director of Finance Jenny Lynn and had like a we walked through each step of the FY24 last minute changes and the projections for the school choice fund, because that's filling some of that small gap that was left. That's it.
There's the second round of calls.
That's me.
It does it in waves. It's very strange.
Oh, that's interesting.
I think it can't send them all at once, so it does them.
Nina got it. Gloria's getting it in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Batch processing.
Okay, other committee updates. Okay, seeing none, we. Sean.
Briefly, CPAC survey is out, I believe now.
Mm-hmm.
So check it out if you haven't. That's accessible to, actually they encourage anyone, even if you don't have students who are partaking in the special education program in Westford. So it's
Great.
out there, it's available, and is it on the school's website?
It's
I
been
think
in
it is.
principal emails.
It has been,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Thanks, Sean. Student update.
Yeah, I guess, last week, WADA presented their When the Mockingbird Sings, and then the WA Talent Show was also at the end on Friday last week, where students and teachers both presented different acts. Some were singing, some were dancing, some were playing instruments all throughout the day. And it was about 2 hours. It was a great way for students to interact with each other and also show off their unique talents. In terms of other events, DECA also had their state competition on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So we brought 95 students from WA to the state level, and I believe around 40 kids are going on to the international competition. So that'll be interesting. So, and ICDC, which is what it's called, is starting on April 22nd and runs to April 25th in Orlando, Florida. So that'll be
Congratulations.
yeah. Thank you.
And then we also had SATs taking place at WA, I think this past Saturday. We also want to let you know that 2 things are happening for juniors that are important, and that is that they should be scheduling their meetings about college right about now to get the ball rolling on that, and their courses, or the entire school's course scheduling is due by Friday, the 3rd. What?
Last Friday.
Well, it was due by Friday. Yeah, so now there's no more scheduling. It was due by Friday.
Yeah. So all the courses for next year are locked in now.
Additionally, for seniors, there's a lot going on. We just had the trustee scholarship submission deadline today, so that ceremony should be happening in the next coming months, which will be exciting. And then there's MCAS testing. In 2 weeks at the end of the month for grade 10. And then the last thing is that NHS is hosting an empty bowls event this Thursday. And if you would like to check out or get more information, they have their site. They have like Instagram, social media, all this kind of stuff. So there's a lot going on at WA right now. But yeah, that was our update.
Thank you. Okay, that was great. We're moving on to our first item under business. It's Neurodiversity Celebration Week.
Yes, it is.
We have some guests.
Mhm.
Do you want to?
So we're excited that Westford Public Schools has been will be. I mean, it's only Monday. Will be participating in Neurodiversity Celebration Week. I was glad that people had brought that information to us, and all of our schools are planning different types of things in an age-appropriate manner in the schools to really celebrate this. And this evening we have Matthew Tricka with us. And we'd love to invite you to kind of come up and talk to us a little bit about,
Yeah.
come on up and talk to us, Maddie, about what this week means to you.
Well, neurodiversity. Oh,
Did Catherine had
Yep.
said some
Yeah.
slides.
I was going to ask. Do
Did
you
she?
want me to
Good.
put those up?
Thank you.
Give me 1 second.
And while that's happening, can I just ask about your name tag? I see a
Yes.
lot of wonderful words underneath
yes,
your name.
So this name tag I made 2 years ago. I would say at a neurodiversity summit, or Summit Academy, and I got to put stickers on to show how all my different personality traits and stuff. So it was fun.
Nice.
Fabulous.
I'm missing one, resilience, but that's the only one I'm missing. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent.
You're doing it.
yeah,
It wasn't as resilient as you
yeah,
are.
yeah.
So that's a good point, Chris. So, as you know, right, this week I'm going to start off just to.
And this is Maddie Trickett. This is Mom Pam.
Yeah,
Trickett.
my mom. Yeah.
So Catherine Clear wasn't able to be here tonight, so I'm just sort of doing the little sort of introduction, and then Maddie will take over.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, so it's Neurodiversity Week, and if you flip it up, we have, this is, I think we are probably all familiar, neurodiversity, and I'm going to read a teeny bit, but I have a bit of an add-on. So describing differences, right, in the way people's brains work. We are not all the same, thankfully. This young girl was 13 when she realized her name's Sienna Castellan, and this is part of, actually maybe coming up, came up with this idea for celebrating, for having this week of celebration. She found there are a lot of resources for parents out there, but she's an Irish student, and realized that there was not a whole lot going on for students. So this is kind of where this came up, the celebration week. And of course, neurodiversity is just appreciating all differences of brain types, right? The idea too is that it was important to notice, like flipping the narrative, like basing things off of strengths and not weaknesses, starting with not a deficit, right? Starting with positives. So schools and organizations, as you can see, the UK writing out there, and it's now an international program, so people are doing this all over the place and taking this week to try and reach out to a lot more people. Excellent. As you can see, there are just many. Maddie can speak to the Tourette syndrome. There's many, actually this young woman who came up with this, she has autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, and ADHD. So she has certainly got some things going on in her name tag. A lot of challenges. And Maddie's going to just give you a little taste of
Yeah, so I'm Matty. My strengths are resilience. Oh, I should say I am resilient. People, I'm a people person. I love meeting people. I love making friends and stuff. And I'm like all about it. Especially if you meet, especially if you're meeting good, solid people. You need solid connections to form a friendship. So, and you just need to know good people in order to
keep you going. It takes a village.
Yeah, it takes a village. Yes. I'm upbeat. And I'm always fighting for my confidence and to be happy. Challenges I do have TS, which you could probably see on the previous slide. Which is my.
What is TS?
I should explain in a little bit. TS is a neurodevelopmental disorder, and it's Tourette syndrome, and it just makes it hard for people to understand and stuff. So that's a brief thing about TS. I also have the learning challenges, and as you know, of executive function, I also have that. And yeah, so that's a bit about my strengths and weaknesses. So what makes a school experience strong for neurodiverse students? I would say having a good, solid team is the foundation of it all. You need good people on your side, by your side. I mean, I can only speak with experience. I've had some wonderful people guiding me throughout my Westford curriculum, and it's been awesome. But
Couldn't do it without your teaching assistants.
yeah, I couldn't
and
do without my teaching
specialists.
assistants and my specialists and yeah. So yeah. And another thing is what makes what makes up a good foundation for a student for learning, I should say, is when teachers and administrators see what we neurodiverse individuals can do instead of what we can't do. And I feel like me and my family feel like that happens a lot. And with anything, and people just put labels on us, and it's not that. I feel like it's not the way life should work, and
It'd be nice if it wasn't that way.
yeah. And the last thing, in before I move on to challenges, is if you can lead strong and have empathy, the students will better be willing to follow your lead more, because it's like crucial to understand and have empathy, which not every teacher does. So now, for what makes a school experience challenging for neurodiverse students is that when we can't participate in the things we want to participate in, it's too many people do it. Not everyone, keep in mind, not everyone, but a few people do it, and it should be changed. I feel like it happens way too often, and
You're like excluded from
and
some
we were
of the options
excluded.
then.
Yeah, and we were excluded from the options, and then we feel just excluded, and we don't feel good, and clearly we don't want that. So that's the first point. The second point is, so when the school community labels us just right off the bat, because labeling is such a pain to deal with.
Put in a box. Right?
Put in a box with a no name. We should be treated like everyone else, going to all these different classes and making it. Everyone needs a voice, and that voice needs to be heard. So that would be point number 2. And the last point I want to make is that school is a place to learn, right? So like we want and for a society, we should allow our learning in
A lot of different ways. people learn, right?
a lot of different ways people learn, and I feel like we should, as a community, everyone should adjust
Look for all
and
those opportunities.
look for all those opportunities and adjust to the student's needs. And each individual is different, and people just need to realize that they are different, and everyone needs something different, but
And still have an opportunity.
still have an opportunity at what they feel good about, and yeah,
That's it.
and so pretty much, yeah,
I think that's it. Yep.
yeah.
Be aware. Learn more.
Be aware,
Talk to people.
learn more, have the conversation. Remember, no two brains think alike. Work alike, and but yet you still need to learn as a team and be a team.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look for different opportunities coming through. This year is sort of like the first kickoff year, so we're trying to,
Right.
we'll be growing it over time, right? Thank you.
And I mean, I will just say, I've been looking forward to this, and I'm glad it worked that we had a meeting this week. We would have highlighted it anyway, but I'm just glad that we get to be here at the beginning of the week, that we're highlighting it, because it's something that I think is not a lot of people's
Right.
radar.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate your leadership in coming
Thank
here.
you.
You said
Yeah.
you need good people on your side and by your side, and I feel like
Yeah.
you're that for us, because you're coming and telling us
Right.
your
Yeah.
story, but also telling us how we can do more. And
Yeah.
it's just, I'm very grateful.
Yeah.
I don't know if there are any other questions or comments from the committee, but
I have, would just like to say something. So today is the day after daylight savings, right?
Yeah.
So it was very dark this morning. It has been difficult for me personally to get my engine running today.
Right.
And when you talk about your upbeatness, boy, did that come shining
Yeah.
through. You are a ray of sunshine,
Thank you.
and I'm grateful you're at the beginning of this meeting, because I feel this rejuvenation
totally.
for the rest of the meeting, and your message is powerful.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing your
Yeah.
perspective and for coming here and teaching us. And as Chris said, your leadership,
Yeah.
I think it will go far, and I encourage you to continue taking opportunities like
Yes.
this, because you've got a talent.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Very
And then it
charismatic.
does
Thank you.
advocacy for the
Yeah,
Tourette
TAA.
Association. So
I was-
if you ever need
I was told, Maddie, that you have a podcast.
I do.
Can you talk about your podcast for
Yeah.
a second and maybe tell all of us how we might be able to listen to your podcast?
Yeah, so it's not out yet, but it will
Okay.
be hopefully this week. By the end of this week. So my podcast is called Brain Shapes. It's about how different people are different, and the way our brains think, and like, so the podcast is about that, but but it's going to be a lot of interviewing different people with different needs and such. So,
and people who work with
and people who
In the
work
area.
with
Awesome.
them,
Catherine
and
Claire's our first.
Yes,
First
yes.
interviewee.
And you
So-
and
Nice.
you're recording it at the podcast studio at
Yes.
Westford Cat.
yes.
Isn't that a
And-
beautiful space?
So cool.
Oh yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, and hopefully, well, my plan is to release it on Apple Music, Pandora, Spotify, everywhere.
Nice.
So,
But go to WestfordCAT to start with.
right, yeah.
I think that anybody who is fortunate enough to watch our meeting tonight and to listen to you speak, I think they would very much want to listen to your podcast. I
Yes.
know I'm looking forward to it.
Oh,
and I
yeah.
think a lot of people will. So people pay attention to Brain Shapes.
Yeah.
with Maddie Tricco.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's it.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you guys very much.
Thanks.
Thank
So
you.
much.
Feel the empowerment.
I love it.
Thank you, Maddie.
Yes.
Thanks, Maddie. Thanks,
Yes.
Pam.
Thanks.
And you're welcome to stick around for the maybe the little bit less exciting or less upbeat parts of not you guys,
Next
not the
section is
next
still
part,
upbeat.
not the next
Still
part.
upbeat too. See, he was about to just
I'm
dismiss
just
you, and I'm like,
saying,
no.
tough act to follow, but
It's
but,
when the
but
ad-
also if you need
yeah.
to leave, we understand as well. So whatever works for you. Okay. Next up, this is also very exciting. We talked about the feasibility study master plan forum last week. Our student leaders at WA, some of our student leaders from student council, student advisory committee, or STAC as they would like to be called now,
STAC.
and legislative council. And this really came from them. They said, it'd be interesting. We had good conversations with them, and they said it'd be interesting to hear what middle schoolers think about, especially elementary school configurations. They just, were the most recently in middle school or elementary schools, and so they took it upon themselves to organize 2 separate student forums, one at Blanchard, one at middle school.
One Blanchard, one for Stony Brook as well.
Daylight savings.
Right?
I love it, but yeah. And so they're going to come and talk about what they learned from those forums, which happened Wednesday before last, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Come on up.
You can bring
You
extra.
can pull more chairs
Drag-
up.
yeah, we
That's
didn't-
fine. Totally fine.
Perfect. Thank you.
My show. On the document, could you assign,
You want to quickly just say your names, just so we know who we're talking to?
I'm Maddie, sophomore at WA on the Student Advisory Committee.
I'm Sarah. I'm in 10th grade. I'm on student council.
Yeah, I'm in 10th grade too.
My name's Anya. I'm a freshman and I'm on the student advisory committee.
I'm Kirsten, I'm a senior, and I'm on the Student Advisory Committee.
I'm Maisha, I'm a junior, and I'm on the Student Advisory Committee.
So a little bit about what we did at the middle school. Was it 2 weeks ago now? Yeah, March 1st. Oh my gosh. Okay. So basically, we heard about the feasibility study, and we wanted to kind of get a take on the middle schoolers' feeling on it, what the younger kids thought. We obviously had a couple discussions about what we thought about the new models, about the systems, the K through 5, and the 1 through 5 with the kindergarten, and then obviously the current system. And we thought it would be good to get the middle schoolers' take on it. So basically, we sent 3 representatives to Blanchard and 4 of us to Stony Brook. So basically we made a slideshow about why we were going there and kind of to give them an introduction to what this is all about, the reconfiguration of the schools, because there's a lot to cover, obviously. And they were very interested, super interested, super enthusiastic and opinionated. We had discussion groups, and we kind of broke out after our slideshow and had a ton of great conversations about what they thought about the models. And, like I said, they are very opinionated. If you guys want to kind of...
I'll just say, too, for people who might be watching, so this group had kind of an early preview of what was going to happen at last week's forum that we held at Stony Brook. And so you went to the middle schools with the idea that, because at our forum we didn't actually we didn't talk about like a pre-K to K kind of
that's true.
breaking out. But early on there was discussion.
Yep.
So they also talked to the middle schoolers of what might that look like and how would you feel about that. So they really, you looked at, what's your first model, just so when we go forward we know. I don't forget what order you did.
Number 1 was the current model.
Was keeping K to 2, 3 to 5.
Yep. Number 2 was K through 5.
K through 5.
The 6 K through 5 schools, and then number 3 was the 1 kindergarten school, and then I don't even
1
know
to
how
5.
many 1 to 5
Right.
schools.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure we're
No,
on
it's
the same
good.
page.
Yeah, you guys take it away.
Do you start Stony Brook first? Yeah. Okay, so me, Maddie, Eric, and Sanvi, we went to Stony Brook.
Eric and Sanvi,
And-
legislative council members,
legislative.
here tonight.
So what we found there was that not all of them had actually experienced like all levels of the public school system. Most of them have done them in like other districts and only moved here later. So that was just a bit of like a problem to work around. But from the ones that did, they had they talked about lots of things they didn't like particularly was the day school split. I think we saw that in common with
Yes, across
with
the
everyone. No one liked the day school split. Very strong opinions about that.
I speak from personal experience.
There was also transitions. We talk about transitions and how certain school systems that we talked about would like cut them down, or the current school system keeping them as they are. And what we found overall is that most of the students, or at least from Stony Brook, found them to be beneficial. And we also think that in the future, it would also be nice for social skills too, having to like develop social skills and talking to new people.
Yeah, they like the change of environment and the ability to kind of, so like I said, like the change. I think being in school for more than 3 years was like a lot for some of them.
Having new teachers and all that.
Yeah.
Speaking about teachers too, some of the students expressed concern about like staffing. They were just concerned about like how staffing would move around, and also like classes like gym and art classes, how would like different levels of that be taught, because some like teachers aren't like, they may not be comfortable with teaching different levels of that subject. And there's also the talk about
I could say buses. We had a very interesting conversation about buses. I know I brought up with my group the topic of like, how would you feel riding the bus to school with kids 5 years younger than you? And they were like, what? They were definitely not against it, but were like, whoa, I don't know if that's okay. Or doing school clubs, school sports, like how would that be broken up? Because obviously that's a huge age range, and you know, for I don't even know, 6-year-old to 12-year-old or 6-year-old to 11-year-old, that is a huge age gap, especially at that age. So that was interesting to hear from them too.
There was lots about busing, because it was like they talked about how it's heavily relying on like older students. If it's like, if you're on a bus with 5th graders and you're a kindergartner, it depends on if the 5th graders choose to behave like poorly, then that could reflect on the kindergartners. Whereas if they were to behave like properly, then that could reflect on the kindergartners. They could try to like act a little more mature and just like reflect on them.
Either way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were definitely like, I know I had some good kids in my group, and we're like, yeah, we could be really good role models. And then I was like, but what about the kids that aren't good role models? You know, how does that? Kindergartners like to do what the older kids do. They look up to the older kids, and you know, so it falls on the older kids to set that example. And I don't know that, you know, any older kid can always come through to that. So.
And there's also the talk about the system too, where bigger families, which we've also talked about as a group ourselves, bigger families who have several kids in their family would have all their kids in preferably the one school, which would keep it a lot easier for the parents. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I mean, there was one point, one year where I think my parents had kids in 4 separate schools, because there was a lot for the parents to keep up with, all the emails and transportation, stuff like that.
And lastly, they really strongly disliked System 3, the one with having like a pre-K to, I think, kindergartner school, because they thought it was very impractical and very unnecessary. So that's what the students.
Yeah, I don't think we took a little exiting ticket, if you will, at the end of our meetings, and we had like sticky notes on a whiteboard under the 3 different systems. And it was overwhelmingly not System 3. Nobody voted for it.
What came out was for Stony Brook, the sticky note activity. For the current model, there was 21 votes. For the second model, for the K through 5s, there was 10 votes, and then the System 3 had 0 votes.
And then for Blanchard, we actually don't have the picture because Gloria took it. I don't know. Do you happen to have the picture? I mean, I know there was one single sticky note for System 3, and mostly were for the current model, but I'm not sure about the System 2.
The other half were we had a none category where we were just like, well, if you don't like any of these, what are your other? And it was all the nuns were for the day school. They were like, no split. It just said no split because they didn't.
No split.
Yeah, they didn't want day school to split off. So that's how our board looked.
Yeah.
It's interesting because that's not possible.
Yeah.
So therefore, that's when it becomes like, what are the priorities?
We had
If they prioritize the day, not having the day split,
Right.
more so than whether or not they have a transition, then that's an interesting balance. But just based on the number, it's not possible to not have one of the schools currently split.
I honestly think the reason why the third system didn't have a lot of votes was because you're putting all the kindergartners in one school and then you're splitting them up again. I think the kids were alarmed that, like, what about they go to school for 1 year and then they're split up again? You know, well, how does that work? And then
K through 5, a lot of the kids like that it would be 6 schools, and then that it would be like, 3 to each middle school, and it would kind of be a more seamless transition versus the break off of day school. I had a lot of kids think strongly about
I
that.
did have one girl who liked the early childhood learning center, then splitting into the elementary schools, mostly because she has a little sibling who I think is of the age that they could go to like a pre-K or kindergarten school, and I think she liked the idea, or at least her parents would, of sending her little sibling to like a younger like early learning center and then going off to elementary schools. So from a parent perspective, I think that could be beneficial.
I will say, I think Gloria has the picture.
She found the picture.
I've got the Blanchard sticky note numbers. Sorry, I didn't send this via email before I left town. But there were 11 votes for keeping the model the way it is now. There were 4 votes for K to 5. There was that 1 vote for the early childhood center, and then into the 1 to 5s, system 3. And then there were 8 votes that really were like, I'm not crazy about any system, but it was, people had written notes on their sticky notes, and the priority in those 8s was, regardless of whatever the system was, they didn't want the day school split. And the day school split was the most bothersome thing, and they were okay with any system as long as it didn't involve a split going into middle school. So that was the Blanchard results.
I think especially looking at the day school split, it like hurts Blanchard the most because 1/3 goes to Blanchard, so you're already like cutting down your known friend base by like 1/3. So it's like really difficult to go to brand new school for middle school when you only know like 1/3 of your school.
Were any of you day to Blanchard? None of you were, right?
I will say the 2, I think, productive takeaways I took away from our conversation was that when we were specifically asking about whether it was like the social emotional aspect of it or like the transitioning aspect of it, basically a big thing was we were trying to figure out how are the 5th graders going to interact with the kindergartners, like what is that age difference going to look like. Most of my kids were pretty indifferent to that. I think their view was just that if we figure it out here, we're going to figure it out there. I don't think it's going to be a huge problem. But it was interesting, and also I will say that we had a lot of students that didn't go to the elementary schools here and actually went to K through 5 schools somewhere else. They said,
K through 12.
yeah, and all of them almost unanimously seemed to agree that that was a better. So what I took away from that was I feel like when you go into the specifics, they don't think it's a bad thing, but then in the end, they want to go with what's comfortable and what they know, because the change is like, it's a big change, obviously, but when you talk about the changes, it doesn't seem like they think it's going to be too bad. So I think that was sort of interesting, is I sense just possibly like a lot of fear behind the decision making as opposed to like very fact-based decisions. But
and for those kids that did go to K through 5 or K through 12 schools, they had really good systems to keep the ages separate in the hallways and the at recess and in the cafeteria, so that wasn't really a huge issue. I mean, I did hear some complaints about the cafeteria because one student said that their 3rd grade was split up, and so like half of the grade would eat with the 1st and 2nd graders and half would eat with the 4th and 5th graders, but like that's not a huge deal. It is an issue, but not a huge deal. And then a lot of the kids said that they like to be in like a bigger school, so they have more people to interact with. So I don't think they really liked the 6 different elementary school system. But yeah, they really didn't like system 3 because they thought it was bad to have everyone go to one school, make friends, make connections, and then just get hurt because they had to leave everyone. So that was like the biggest issue with why they really didn't like that system.
Yeah, we had, with the going off of the K through 5 schools, the K through 5, obviously, I had one kid bring up, like, how was lockers work? Because obviously kindergartners at Miller, I know, had cubbies. And then 5th graders have lockers. Like, it's very different for, the building standpoint. But also, like, the breakup of kids, how would that work with, like, classes-wise? And yeah, they were interested to hear about that, and they were having some good conversations about solutions and, you know, could there be dedicated hallways? Yeah, they were very imaginative.
Do you want to talk
I
about
know.
the kid that said he chose his friend?
The kid's
Oh,
sad
yeah.
story? Oh.
Yeah, the sad story.
This is one particular kid who talked about how he, this is regarding the day school split. He would pick and choose, or he had to be particular about who he became friends with, because he didn't want to become friends with a kid who he knew he would later have to split up with. And so he was particular about who he became friends with. And it was
So
like
he knew where they lived or something.
Or I think he'd asked him
Yeah.
about it.
You know,
Well,
yeah,
okay.
right, you kind of know where you're gonna go.
But like that might be an issue. I don't know. Well, I don't think younger kids would think of that.
No,
That's sort of simultaneously like
when he
really proactive
But like
and
that
strategic and kind of tragic too.
It's a little bit.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, one more thing. Going off of the different areas, I drew for a map for my group, and it was kind of like this pie chart, and it was like, you know, of Westford, and I split it up into 3 different sections first, and I was like, okay, these are your elementary school areas. You know, if you have your friend that lives this distance away, you know, and you go to the same school right now, if it was split up into 6 sections, 6 different K through 5 schools, or 1 through 5, you know, would you still be in the same school as your friend? And I had a couple kids who were like, my friend lives far away, and they would totally be split up. And I was like, that's the thing. Would you prefer like a smaller area per school, but like have a bigger age range, or would you prefer a bigger area with less of an age range? And they were kind of split on that. Some kids were like, it doesn't matter to me, and other kids were like, nope, my friend lives a few miles that way. I need to be in school with them. So.
But at the same time, a lot of the kids didn't really understand the concept.
Yeah,
so
it was hard to explain to them.
Especially with like busing, a lot of the way they interpret it, when like with more schools, would that there'd be more kids on the bus.
Yeah.
But like it was hard to explain to them, like that based on like regions and class, the number of kids, it wouldn't be like that. At least the ratios wouldn't be. But like buses again, which is in general.
They also had expressed a concern about like the dismissal times and like arrival, because they said that like kindergartners and like kids at the younger ages, their days like shortened, so you can't have kindergartners doing a 6-hour day. So they were just like, they didn't really know how dismissal and arrival would work if they were all kind of put in one school.
Issue of busing, all buses at one time. Would you have to stagger start times?
Yeah.
Well, one of the possibilities for us is if we consider doing something like that, it might actually allow us to reassess our start times.
Yeah. Yep. I was talking
in
about
general. So right now we have too many different times in which people are starting. So to split the K to 2 versus the 3 to 5 up at different times, if they were at the same time, that might actually allow us to allow the teenagers to go to school later, which we know all of the research says is better. So interesting, yeah. Wow, you had some great conversations.
They really did.
Yeah, I did want to say, my group of kids were talking a lot about how there would be inter-school competition. I don't know how like if that's true, but they were saying there's a lot of competition between Stony Brook and Blanchard, especially since they don't have a lot of interaction. Like they were saying the first time they met all of these kids was when they went to visit WA, and it's not really related, but they want to see more of the kids at other schools. So if we were to go for the 6-school model, they think that there should be activities where they like combine like 2 schools, like maybe have a sister school or a pair school where they go to activities together, so that they can meet more people.
Yeah, a kid in my group, he was a soccer player, and we were talking about the split and stuff, and kind of just the social aspect of all of this in general. And he was like, he actually mentioned the competition, like you said, about kids with Blanchard, and he was like, you know, we have these big rival soccer games, and you know, and he was like, you know, like those guys are my enemies right now. And I was like, that's interesting to hear, because in another year or two, those guys are going to be like who you play with and who you spend a whole high school season with for however many years. And he was like, yeah, like I'd like to get to know them more. I have that on my side as well. So. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
This is like, I don't know if it's really on topic of what we're talking about right now, but one of the kids, he had mentioned like the concern of being next to classrooms with kids who are younger. So he was saying that, say you're taking a test or something like that, and you're next to like a younger class, to hear people screaming and stuff like that can be really distracting while you're trying to take a test. So he was just saying that like,
they know that happens in middle school every day, right?
But they were just saying they wanted to see like the grades more separated just by like age, so that there's some kind of control on noise, I suppose.
So overall, we noticed that the opinions of Stony Brook students and Blanchard students were pretty much the same. And the biggest difference in opinion on like which system was best depended on where they spent their elementary years.
It's fascinating.
Anything else?
Well, thanks for doing this, guys.
Hey, do we have
This is
questions?
fantastic.
Questions from the committee or you folks for our students?
Just impressed. Thank you.
Very informative.
And you're going to compile some of the comments you wrote down, right? Is that true? That
Yeah, that's
what
what we
we
were
were-
using right now to go
Yeah.
off of. So
And that's something we could get.
Chris, I have two questions.
Yes.
So, what were the sample sizes? Did you say 20?
30?
Like 20 to 30, I think.
30.
Yeah.
And then how were those students selected? Were those from the administration of?
No, they were members of their student council.
Yes.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
we
okay,
should know.
okay.
So that's probably why they're opinionated.
Yeah.
That's why they were
Yes.
They came to talk.
Yeah.
They've some of them have very bright futures in WA leadership.
Okay.
I would say.
Definitely.
But
Other questions or comments?
Do you seem to enjoy this, so I'm glad that we had this cause for this to happen, but what are other conversations you could have with them? Because I think it'd be great if you were able to do this more than just this one time, but
like in regards to different topics,
Yeah.
like not just school.
yeah, did you think about that? Are there other things that you could benefit?
Maybe I mean, what Maddie said, like maybe like partnering schools more, like creating more, not like town-wide events, but like
Just
within
bonding
schools,
us,
just-
bonding us earlier.
Yeah.
We have 4 years obviously in one school together until we graduate, and I feel like, you know, you went to Blanchard and I didn't see you for 3
And
years.
Stony.
Or no, you were Stony, right? I'm sorry. You went away for 1 year. Never mind. But like kids from different schools, like I don't see for 3 years. We both didn't see for however many years, and so I think more collaboration between the schools would be good. So maybe when they're younger, or like, you know, for the middle schoolers to collaborate more, and then even us to collaborate with the younger kids. It was cool to talk to them and just hear their opinions and what they went through these past 3 years.
So I think more to your question, unrelated to like this type of discussion or this feasibility plan, I'd like to collect opinions on issues in the cafeteria because that's kind of what I've been focusing on in STAC this year. I don't know if you know, but I met with Colleen Wallace and Mr. Antonelli to talk about adding vegetarian and vegan labels to the sandwiches and salads so that there weren't as many incidents of eating meat. So I'd like to collect some opinions of middle schoolers on that.
I bet they would have a lot of opinions about food in the cafeteria as well too, so that probably would be good.
And I think it can get them like started to like it can get them to start thinking the way we all have thought and now are able to share with you guys. We can start those conversations, whether it's about like neurodiversity, right? Like even these such things, if we integrate into the middle school, we can get their minds to start thinking the way that we do. That way they come into high school with thoughts ready and
interested in what we're doing.
Or they just know that there are opportunities at the academy for them to do the things that you're doing.
Right.
Because I think a lot of kids like come into high school during election season and they're like, I don't know what I want to
They
do.
come in
They,
like right then.
Well,
I don't
maybe
think any
that's
of us
something
know.
to do, is to go down to the middle schools and present on some of these different
That's something
opportunities.
I was wondering about because I was thinking about that. I was like, did they do? Because I know the 8th graders came for the field trip, but I cannot remember off the top of my head though if they got presentation. They got something in there.
Yeah,
it wasn't
we-
very informative.
It wasn't okay. So it wasn't. Very
There's a lot to
informative.
cover. I mean, if you think about the
Because
breadth of things that they're going to
WA
be.
student government is pretty complicated to the point that I explain it to WA students a lot. So I feel like to 8th graders coming in, it would be beneficial to explain it to them.
Good idea.
We could have a slideshow that we use every year.
I feel like our student government like system is like complicated.
Mrs. Murphy
walk
and I
into
spent about an hour mapping it out in one small boardroom all over that whiteboard. Yeah, it is complicated.
And like for that, possibly branching that outside of their student council to probably maybe the 8th grade itself to like, have like a wider net to cast.
I think it would be really nice to like go back to the middle school, maybe not like visits for like one specific subject, but maybe like a visit where we talk about like a couple subjects, like how Kirsten mentioned the cafeteria. I'm trying to like start pushing for like feminine hygiene products in bathrooms, which I think would be especially important in middle schools. So I feel like we should like try to visit there more, so we could start to just bring awareness to these
couple large meetings a year.
Probably during course selections, because they have to do course selections in 8th grade, and that's their first time. So
Right.
probably having some high
Especially
schoolers
like
talk about
from
it
experience,
yeah.
like, oh, what is this class like? Because obviously going from a middle school level class to an honors class in high school is a big jump. So you get some like first-hand experience of how's the pressure, what's the work like, how much homework do you get, all of those different aspects.
Yeah, I know. I don't have any older siblings, and going to WA was so overwhelming without, like, obviously I could ask questions to, like, you know, friends' older siblings, but there's only so much information I can get, and having access to, like, older peers would be so beneficial, especially in 8th graders who, you know, what are these classes like? And like you said, homework, it would be really helpful.
Especially if you're looking to go down like a certain path. Like
Yeah,
I know
to,
I
like,
was going to go
help
down
map
more
it
like a
out.
medical path, and like it was kind of hard to find certain things I should take in order to like get on that path.
Yeah. Just like
I
the
kinda had to,
explaining
like,
of things, it's so
find it out
overwhelming.
myself.
Yeah.
Understanding the whole math flow chart, like what
Yeah.
math you take in
I
freshman
still
and
get
sophomore year
confused.
affects what you can take senior year.
Yeah.
Well, I can say that from my conversations with the advisors at Stony Brook, they were really excited about the prospect of future interaction between various groups at WA and the school and their student leadership. So I think there's definitely room to do more.
And the whole
in
point is that
future.
we give students a voice, and
Yeah.
we're able to do that for younger students.
And you guys have done, you've done so much this year, and it's the first year for 2 of these groups, and it's really remarkable. And how the 3 groups are working together is really great as well. So we appreciate all you've done, and for coming out tonight and spending your evening with us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
Thanks, everybody.
So
Keep forgetting she's behind
I
us.
know. She keeps scaring us like.
Behind you.
Hi, thank you.
Bye. Good night.
Good night,
Bye,
guys.
guys.
Good
night.
See you, Maddie. I'm thinking we flip-flop the last 2 items on the agenda.
Yep.
If people are okay with that, because I know we have some folks for the last agenda item, and I think it might be a little more tedious what we're doing for the SDIP, just trying to make sure we like that and are finished looking at that. And so let's go to the Indigenous Peoples' Day observance agenda item that we started basically at our last meeting with a presentation from our town DEI committee members, and we appreciate that. We've got Scott Harkness in the room. We have Joe Diamond on Zoom with us. And I think, you know, it was mostly presentation. We didn't get into much discussion at that time. Catherine mentioned, well, maybe, you know, there are some connections to, you know, educational matters and just things that are particular to the district. Would be helpful to do a resolution where you can kind of explain what we want to vote on today at this meeting. And so Catherine and Gloria volunteered to look at doing a resolution with me that would give a little bit more language and explanation and background to the question of, do we want to, as a committee, put our vote behind recommending to the voters that on a town election on May 2nd, that they would vote in favor of Indigenous Peoples' Day. I'm telling you, the words are not coming. And so that's what we have. It's in the packet. We did come up with a resolution that we can discuss here. We can look at that. It is one resolution. It's editable, I will say. There is a world where we vote on that resolution, or there's a world where we don't, that we vote just up or down on, do we approve this, do we recommend this ballot question, but we, maybe don't vote to approve the resolution. I'm kind of looking to the committee to see how we want to go forward. I personally will start by saying I think the resolution does give some context to a vote on Indigenous Peoples' Day. I think it could help members of the public. It gives them something to look at and say, oh, here's some of the rationale, here's some of the explanation that we want to consider going into, a vote like that or a ballot question like that. But I'm kind of looking to the committee for your thoughts on the resolution, and we can go from there. We see if we have a motion for that.
Did you say you had an order in mind?
Of what I
Between like the ballot question?
I would say I want to open conversation up.
Okay.
I mean, I think if the resolution, I'm not speaking as chair, I'm speaking as a committee member. If it's something the committee is looking at and feels good about, then I would start there, because I think that covers both.
Okay.
That covers our recommendation
right.
for the
Sure.
ballot question, but also gives a little more, I think, meat on those bones.
Yeah, Chris, the one thing I'd add for context is when we developed the resolution, we looked at similar resolutions and statements that had been adopted in other towns that have considered this question, and the resolved clause at the end of the resolution does mirror the wording of the ballot question on May 2nd. So we tried to be really intentional about the words that we were using and making sure that we were in line with what other towns and the organization Mass Indigenous Peoples has promoted this in 20 other towns. And so we're very much trying to be in alignment with those.
Thanks, Gloria. Yep. I'm putting it up there.
Oh, great.
And we did. It was a good conversation about what we felt like was important to include and what we felt like wasn't. We didn't want it to be longer than it needed to be. We wanted to hit on the key points, kind of make it accessible for a range of people who maybe have questions about this or have mixed feelings, because we know it is, it's a charged conversation for some folks, and it's a challenging thing to consider for others. And so we really tried to balance those things in it.
So Chris, I have been thinking this through for the last couple of weeks. I think this is a little bit more complicated than it seems. I look into the ballot question. I think we have to recognize history, but on the other hand, the way the ballot question is worded doesn't actually tell the complete story. In my opinion, I think the ballot question itself is very one-sided. The story of Columbus should be told in full, right? So his contribution through the age of exploration, and also the harm to be done to the Native America, to the Native people in Central America, to be more specific, right? That's where it happened. 500 years ago, when Columbus actually set off to actually say, I believe the world is not flat, it's round, right? And then nobody believed him, right? People were laughing at him, right? So through the technology know-how, through determination and bravery, to be able to actually come over to here, it looks easy today. But when the first person did it, definitely it's not easy. People recognize his contribution is not say, hey, what he did to the Native Americans were correct, right? And people are not actually condoning that. Especially for nowadays, we actually in the age of space exploration, people trying to actually move life beyond the Earth. We are actually pursuing with the same kind of determination, and then technology know-how we're trying to, and then through that, life's being lost, everything, right? So I don't think we should undermine or underestimate the contribution. And then I look into this resolution, I think what happened to Native people in North America or in Westford that's like at least a couple hundred years ago. Later, after Columbus' death, I just don't think it's fair to blame those things happen in the land of United States of America to someone died like almost 200 years ago. And then also like, if you look into the term Indigenous Peoples Day, right, that actually cover a very wide range. Should we actually blame like Native people in Australia or in other parts of the world on Columbus as well? I think that's a very broad like blame game putting on one person. I think that Columbus is being singled out because it's an easy target, right? If we look into history, the age of exploration is intertwined with the spread of Christianity, no matter you agree or not, right? It's like Columbus is a very like religious person. And then at that time, like he got funding from Spain. So, and then if you look into like the spread of Christianity or other religion or rise of empire, it often comes with conquest or like brutal ruthless violence, all those things. Even like during Columbus' age, right? If you look into like the wars in Italy, and then the sack of Naples happened like a couple of years after Columbus discovered America. It's very brutal. So those were the rules of engagement, not just like toward Native Americans, but also toward like people in Europe. When Christianity spread in Europe, pagans vanished. So really it's like we cannot just actually use today's standard to look into judge someone like 500 years ago. And then I just don't know like if we put ourselves into Columbus' shoes, maybe we could do better or maybe we could do worse, right? That's where it's like I'm not sure if like this is well like just by replacing Columbus Day with Indigenous People Day will actually solve anything here. The other perspective really is like, it sounds funny, more than 50 years ago, like Chairman Mao started like Cultural Revolution, right? The communists, they claim to actually represent the oppressed and the poor, right? So what happened? His right guard, mostly teenagers, 20s, then actually like went out to say, hey, this statue, this guy is like oppressor. Oh, destroy it. Oh, this temple, destroy it. This book, burn it, right? So like it creates massive chaos and then destruction to the entire country. And then thank God, right? Cultural Revolution was over, and then they renamed everything, renamed roads, renamed like cities, like for what purpose? After Cultural Revolution is over, you know what? A lot of things came back, like with its original stuff. But like what's lost is all those historical artifacts got destroyed. Those cannot be recovered. So those, from my perspective, I just say the ballot question, another resolution does not actually tell a fair story or complete story. And then I cannot vote yes for the ballot question, and I cannot vote yes on the resolution.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Other committee thoughts? I mean, do you want to go?
I have a few, but you can go, Chris.
I would highlight, because I hear a lot of what you're saying, and I think for me, and you're right in that a ballot question and a resolution can't tell the whole story of everything. You're right. I agree with that. And that's why, I do think that's why we have history classes and we have history books to tell the whole story. I think for me personally, it comes down to that fifth clause that talks about holidays are an intentional way of celebrating or memorializing persons, cultures, and events. And so I think that about statues as well, right? Statues are not history lessons. They're not history books. Holidays aren't history. They're what you choose intentionally to celebrate. And so to me, this wouldn't erase the good things about Columbus and, you know, his journeys and his voyages and his groundbreaking, you know, accomplishments in many regards. But it would just be us saying, we can look at those, and we can look at those with a critical eye, and we can still learn about those and understand their importance, because they are important to the history. And you're right, it's hard to look back and say, oh, these things led to these things when a lot of time passed, and it's hard to predict where the things that we honor now are going to lead later, and I will recognize that. But the question is, do we want to honor it? Not do we, you know, we're not choosing to ignore it or say it never happened or say it's all bad. It's just that what are we lifting up versus what are we, you know, maybe teaching or learning about.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
That same line jumped out at me too, because to me that's like, you know, a lot of times we make decisions about like how does it impact a family or a student, right? And this isn't on the table for tonight, but you could see a path where if depending on the ballot question, maybe we are revisiting what it's called on our calendar, right? And so then, to me, that's a signal that we're sharing to our families about the intentional way of celebrating, like how it's worded in the resolution. So I appreciate that that jumped out at you as well. And I think for me, it's very nuanced, obviously, but the points that were made when we discussed this 2 weeks ago, I think landed me in the camp of it's a teachable moment. And I think that the resolution and the ballot questions speak to what is happening in our schools and in the history classes, like we heard from our students. And so I think this aligns with what's happening in our schools and that critical eye that we are encouraging to happen for our students. So I'm in favor of both.
Okay.
Yeah, I think as school districts, right, and this has been said, that there's this, it's almost more important for us to kind of like set a precedent and to be as inclusive as possible, because you're dealing primarily with adolescents. And I know Dr. Chu has talked about it time and time again, that we want our communities to be thriving areas where everyone feels welcome and there's this excitement about learning. And I think what's sad about this holiday, right, because it celebrates a person, and it also celebrates a great accomplishment, discovering America, but you can't separate the person from the discovery, and unfortunately the person, and we know this objectively, you know, murdered and enslaved a certain group of people on the basis of their race. And if you can't separate that, and there is a whole sect of our population in Westford, right, and nationally, who whenever they see this holiday are reminded of that behavior by a particular individual, I mean, I just don't think we're being as inclusive as possible, right, particularly as a school district. So it just, I get it, I hear the argument, we only have so many holidays in a year. Why not make, you know, the holidays that we do have a celebration of an individual or a group or a movement that we can all get behind, everyone, you know? And it strikes me that Indigenous Peoples' Day is that type of holiday that we can all be proud of. And these discussions as to Christopher Columbus and his contributions, and these can happen in the classroom, of course, along with his behavior outside of that. So it strikes me I'm in favor of this resolution. I'm also in favor of the ballot question.
Thanks. Gloria, let me take the screen share off.
Would the chair entertain a motion?
He would.
Then I would make a motion that the school committee adopt the resolution relating to the recognition of Indigenous Peoples Day in support of the May 2nd ballot question.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any last discussion? Any comments from our students?
I think
You spoke to it last time. But
yeah, I think I'll just keep it short. I think all I will say is that I have a lot of faith in the students in that we have the capacity to acknowledge what a discovery has done and also understand why it is nuanced. And I feel that if students are capable, then adults are just as much, if not twice capable, or doubly capable, right, of understanding this. And I think that I think that we are so capable of understanding this while also celebrating a group of people who have had enormous trauma inflicted upon them by a certain person. So I don't think that celebrating a certain group of people negates the worth of a discovery. I think that we can just understand that somebody has inflicted a lot of trauma and damage, but also brought a certain degree of knowledge to this world. Doesn't necessarily mean that we need to be celebrating them.
thanks. Okay. If there's no more comments, discussion, questions, then I will call for the vote. It'll be a roll call vote. All in favor of approving the resolution in support of the ballot question for Indigenous Peoples Day. Ming-Chen?
No.
Valerie?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Sean?
Aye.
Gloria?
Aye.
Okay, that passes 4-1. So we have that resolution. We'll hand that off to the town DEI committee to use as you will, I guess. Thanks for coming last time and coming this time, and we'll keep an eye on that. And I keep saying May 2nd. That is correct, right?
Yes.
May 2nd. All right.
Yep.
We'll see where that leads.
Chris, before we go on to something else.
Yeah.
So there was a discussion, there was a question from I believe a parent regarding our school calendar and our current classification of the second Monday in October. So can we talk about that and what this might look like depending on
Good night.
Thanks, guys.
after tonight's conversation?
Are you asking me?
Are
you asking Chris?
It's open to the,
I'm asking
it's
you,
open to the
all of a
committee,
sudden-
right?
all of a sudden it was like there are too many Chris's involved
Yeah,
here.
so I think last time I brought it up, I say like the town is going to have a vote,
Right.
then let the voter decide. Because if the voter decide one way or the other, and then we will just follow the voters like mandate.
I mean,
That was the conversation.
yeah,
That's
that
how
took
we said
place
it last time.
When we talked about
Right.
adding it onto the calendar.
I mean, I would argue we could have a discussion regardless of what the town does. I mean, it's our calendar, I think, I think legally we would be allowed to put whatever words on that day. I mean, there's nothing that says we have to take that day off school, right? I mean.
No, it's a state holiday.
It's a state
Yeah,
holiday.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe there are some questions.
Yeah.
I think we'd have to answer those.
Yeah.
But yeah, my inclination for now would be, let's see what happens on
Yeah.
May 2nd, and then we,
And then revisit
we
it.
might have
Because
to revisit.
because I think my position is like we're elected leaders of the town. I'll respect whatever the voter decides.
Right.
If the voter decides one way, we follow the voter's voice. Because otherwise, like we just say the voter does something and then we say, hey, we don't care, and we just do whatever we want. I don't think that's like how we should behave.
And I do think the conversation that we had originally was, should we have both listed? And because we knew that this was going to be
Ongoing, right.
an ongoing thing, I think the committee decided to just wait. And so I feel like that would still be,
We're still waiting.
you still wait and see what happens on May 2nd, because then if the voters decide to approve the ballot question, then that would mean one thing that we do with the calendar. If they choose not to, there would be nothing stopping us from, in the past, didn't we have both days listed? I feel like we did. And this year we kind of just
Last year
got
too, I think.
caught up in
Yeah.
moving on with all the other dates and everything moving around, but we could then have both days listed or just one of the days listed, depending on that. But we can make that decision in May.
I think that makes sense. Yeah, we can see. Okay.
All right. So on to our ISDIP. So you had asked for people to provide you some feedback. And so some people did provide some feedback. And what I thought might be helpful, since some of it is wordsmithing type things, I would love to just kind of go through the feedback and we can sort of edit it live and then at the end decide what you want to vote on.
Okay.
That was my kind of thought. So
Yep.
the first thing is one of the questions was with the mission, specifically talking about understanding embrace variability.
Yeah.
And I will say that actually came directly from the work that we're doing with UDL and even based on Maddie's presentation this evening too, like that we had a very deliberate, intentional conversation at the DEI team and then Gloria and Catherine and I as well around specifically choosing to lead with the word variability and sort of make that a standard understanding within our community versus the questions were, would it make more sense to people if we talked about individual differences? So it was a very intentional choice to say embrace variability and honor diversity. So I don't know if that helps to answer.
It does, because I just didn't know, is there?
Right.
And maybe that word is, I don't know if coming from engineering, maybe that word hits my ear in a different way.
Variability?
Sure.
Variability. Like, I just feel like there's uncertainty or could we say variability in students or in student, is there a way to make it up? Because, and the other thing is ambiguous to me if
External
we
versus
meant,
internal.
yeah.
Like almost.
Well, for me, I wasn't sure if it was variability in students and how they learn and how they grow and how they have interest, or if it was
Variability
embracing,
through a pandemic.
right, or embracing uncertainty and having to adapt. And so to me, it's still, I now know which one it means because you just told me, but if I weren't here right now and I were reading this, I wouldn't know what that means.
However, wouldn't both be good? What you just described too? Being able to
Yes,
adjust and adapt?
absolutely.
Yeah.
But all I know is when I read it, I was just like, oh, I don't know which one it is, and then I just went into a,
Gotcha.
like a tangent of thinking about which one it is, and I agree both would be good. I just don't know if there's a way to make it concrete.
Yeah, it's nice about variable. It's more about like the spread, right?
I look to my.
I don't know, Gloria, did you have thoughts specifically about what he was just saying?
Yeah, I feel like I would look to the educational leaders in the room to kind of do the appropriate wordsmithing, but it does also resonate that we want to make sure that it is accessible to whoever parent, community member would pick up the document. So I'm in favor of either that embraces the concept, and whether that is keeping it as variability or changing to something that might say something more along the lines of individual differences. I just want to make sure that it's both understandable to the public and educationally appropriate and respectful terminology.
So if we were to consider there, so if we think of it again, the focus of the sentence again is on the curious lifelong learners. So we value the development of curious lifelong learners who are responsible, empathetic members of the community, demonstrating innovation through a wide variety of opportunities within inclusive, joyful learning environments that embrace their variability and honor their diversity.
Yeah. Or what I just whispered to Chris was embrace individual variability, but I think there works too.
Yeah, I think they're.
Well, individual probably works better.
Well, I think it's there. It creates that possessiveness back to the students.
Exactly, because I even found that I was in the middle of being like, wait, are we still talking about the students
or the learning
and so the
environment?
there would actually help me tie it together.
To the sentence, to the students.
And I like how it circles the diversity, like both of them.
Right.
Are
Yep.
doing this
Okay.
clearly.
Now,
The words.
Would make me happy.
I'm just going down the document here, so the beginning of the Oxford comma fight.
It's a fight?
Uh-oh.
didn't know.
Some people would like us to have Oxford commas, and some of
We're
us.
taking positions on Oxford comments.
Do we need a vote?
Well, one person.
I wrote a
wants-
resolution. I don't know.
One person wants us to add Oxford commas in a couple of places. Is it the will of the committee to use Oxford commas, or is it the will of the committee to not use Oxford commas? And that would actually take place of, that would
Wait.
take care of 2 or 3 of the comments.
I need to know where the.
Oh, I'm the
where
Oxford comma.
alliance
I'm
is.
the Oxford comma.
Gloria has her hand up.
Protagonist. Proponent. Thank you. That's
And
better.
who's the antagonist?
I embrace
Who's
the
resisting?
Oxford comma, and it is my eternal shame that I did not catch that during drafting, because I do.
So you would have fought for it then?
Yeah, I would have, and I hang my head in shame. I apologize.
I'm in favor of them for wide-ranging documents like this, that you want explicit, like, it helps just the clarity, I think.
Okay, so that we will include the appropriate Oxford commas.
Thank
you. And I will.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I've got to find
I'll
where
sleep
the other
easy.
one is. Yeah, there was only 2, I believe.
Yeah.
After calendars. Yeah. So let me find that. Do you have? Because if you even want to show the live document,
Sure.
Well, I was trying to make sure I keep
yeah.
your notes.
Yep.
I'm changing it on the
Put it up.
live document as we go, so then we'll see it. And then the other pieces here, we should be able to go through, I think, a little bit. Oh, where is calendar? There it is.
3.1.
Yep, thank you. Okay. So,
And where's the other one, after collaboration?
collaboration,
Yep, okay.
comma, Oxford comma, and critical thinking. Okay, so then the next piece was, there was a comment about strategy objective 1 and wondering whether we, kind of flip the verbiage, infuse our equity work into the heart of what we do, which is working with students via our curriculum and instruction. And there was a recommendation to say, infuse our equity work into our curriculum and instruction, the heart of what we do.
Do you want me to speak to my
If you want to.
Oh, when you read it the first way, it just felt run-on-ish or clunky. I mean, I don't know that I feel so strongly about it at 8:35
Which is
p.m.
honestly why I wanted to do this instead, because I'm
mean,
like, when just different comments come in, I'm like, well, I could change that, but if only one person feels that way, then it's
I
kind
mean,
of like, why
I
are we
read it
changing
clunky the first time I read it.
Yeah.
I like that switching the order makes you see the words curriculum and instruction earlier, because I feel like they're important. Whereas if you don't, you get a lot of
Words.
of what which we do is, of what we do which is, and so I like infuse it with curriculum instruction, and then either what you did, which is like an M dash, the heart of what we do, or you could also do comma. I like commas. Comma, which is the heart of what we do.
I'm not picky
Either
about
one, right? Like,
what form of.
but I like getting to curriculum and instruction earlier in the objective.
Yep. Anybody else feel so strongly, or is this just going to be a Chris show?
This is grammar.
Grammar.
which is
Go back
fine.
to grammar school.
Okay.
Okay, do you want to go to initiatives? Or
Yep.
was that your big one, or do you want
Yeah.
to wait on that one?
It's up to.
That's kind of the big thing. So I was going to say that, first of all, where you wanted to move things around, like the suggestion that you had to move different things so that we could talk about, the suggestion was, I'll tell everybody, was seeing somewhere family, staff, taxpayer communication embedded within the plan, and our community engagement becoming increasingly important with the district master plan. So what I actually think it should just live in 2.2, develop and communicate a district master plan. If we want to say communicate it to all our stakeholders, but I feel like it belongs right there in 2.2, which is what you were looking at other options where it could belong, and that was my thought. What is your thought?
I will say that the district master plan for me was like one example of where I see the need for communication, but, and I don't think this is a surprise at all, but I just would love a more intentional, strategy about two-way communication and engagement with all of our stakeholders. So I could see that standing on its own, or I'm at a minimum happy to see it embedded with the district master plan, because that will be sharing that with the community will be a huge
Right.
portion of that. So, and I went back and forth on whether, just for simplicity's sake, using an example of like, more forums or something like that, right, to just give some tangible to this, whether that belongs here or whether it's more in a superintendent goal
Right.
or school committee goals, or where does that live, right?
Right.
So I'm flexible on that, right? Like, I just always want to elevate that into the conversation, because I do think it's an important part of what we do. I think it could be strengthened, and so I just always want to include it in something that's overarching of the next couple of years for our work.
And I feel like I hear all of that. But then as I look at the strategic objectives, I'm like, well, there's not one of them that is a communication objective per se.
Right.
And so then it is a matter of like, how do we make it coherent?
Mm-hmm.
Because at first, I agree that we want to be strategic, and that should be one of our goals, is making sure we're always evaluating how we communicate.
Mm-hmm.
But I do wonder if maybe putting it in the, 2.2 is sort of like the compromise to keep this coherent, because
Yep.
having it be
Right.
its own doesn't
Right,
align at the
and
top level.
that's kind of where my comment went, because I didn't
Yeah.
want to just
Right.
lobby that over of
Right.
add communication and then not have like a
Right.
proposal
So you
of
did-
where that
that's true.
goes.
I mean,
And then
looking at
I
the other
wrestled with it
ones,
too,
yeah.
of, does it go, what was my, maybe 3.2?
2.4.
Well, you had suggested moving some around and putting things, and
Yeah,
that's where
and I wasn't
I
sure.
felt like it
Yeah.
started, like,
Yeah.
because all the other initiatives are in places for specific reasons. So
Reasons,
to me,
sure.
it seems like it
Yep.
works best to go there. Okay. So what I did is just to develop a district master plan following a thorough review of the feasibility study report and communicate it to all of our stakeholders. Do you want it to specifically say taxpayers?
No, stakeholders is fine. It's just communicate alone sounds one way.
Well,
What about provide communication opportunities or something like that for stakeholders?
I feel like that is more, I don't have like words that I'm not saying.
right, okay.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's no like sentence in my head that I'm hoping you get to. I don't know what's
Right.
a better option, but that sounded better to
Or
me than just
interactive
communicate.
And in this, I also do think that we can decide what that effective communication is. You know what I'm saying? So like,
Maybe even just including effective or,
And effectively communicate it.
yeah.
But then,
I
how
think
do you,
it just
how,
makes
how
it
do you
more-
define effective, right?
Well, it pushes us to be a
Yeah.
little bit more intentional about it.
This is high level enough.
How about
that hopefully-
intentionally communicate? Proactively communicate. Communicate. I feel like it's still just communicate.
I liked effective better than the other ones, but like I said, I'm open, it opens the door for me
Okay.
to have it in there.
All right.
And if no one else feels strongly about it, I'm happy to.
The question about the conducting an equity audit of the curriculum, that is a very specific thing.
Okay.
And that's one of the conversations we've been having with the town, is that as we do our equity audit, when you do this for a school, it's going to be focused on and really that will be curriculum and instruction, but it focuses on the curriculum, and this is what is taking place in the classrooms and what resources exist, and it in itself is an exhaustive experience, right? And it's going to give us a lot of data and information. But your question about whether that seemed more narrow than one had expected, and I feel like we will be assessing the equity of our policies, and we'll be doing this in a lot of other things as well too.
Yeah.
But that's why it specifically calls out doing an equity audit of the curriculum.
Wait, so why does it not, is it because the strategic objective only mentions curriculum instruction, that this sub-item initiative?
Well, and if you remember, one of the first things that we talked about is that this whole thing is, again, focused on every single one of these objectives should have a direct impact on learning and on the classroom. And so that's why it is focused in that.
Right, but I think of things like disciplinary procedures, right? I think of that as a huge impact on the classroom that I assumed would be part of an equity audit. So I think that's the kind of thing, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
I think we'd want a gut feeling like that's also part of, that's part of our vision of what we want to see happen, is not just, what's the curriculum, what's the syllabus, what books are being used, but like what are our policies and procedures, what's our disciplinary process. I think that's pretty important, but I'm open to hearing maybe where we think it fits or how we see it being represented in the SDIP as well.
I feel like it wouldn't have flagged for me if it ended after audit, right? Like to specify curriculum is where I paused. Because when we had the conversations about it from an ARPA request, I don't remember that sort of targeted focus. And
Okay.
so that's why I was like, well, wait a minute. I felt like it had been a bit broader. And I was worried that, I agree that to me it was broader, and I want to see that. And so this felt narrower, and I want to make sure that I'm not missing a step, or that we've changed the plan.
I will say,
Yeah.
you're not missing a step. We didn't change the plan in any way.
Okay.
Right? Because the conversation, and when you specifically talk in schools about an equity audit, you're primarily talking about your curriculum, and that's what you look at. I think we could easily say, we want to conduct an equity audit of our resources and practices, which would include curriculum, it would include that. We might, that in itself is probably going to be multiple audits, though, as opposed to like a more comprehensive, bringing in somebody to help us, whether we do our internal and an external, because those are things that we've talked about.
Yep.
I feel like that might be a combination of different things, which is fine. I think it could say that. If we said resources and practices, it kind of brings all of that in
That feels
together,
better.
and it still lives in there.
I think part of it too is, at some point when we sort of went, before we started this process, or early on, we had this idea, I think, of what a strategic plan was going to look like. And then I think for some of us, the notion of a strategic district improvement plan was kind of new or different from what we envisioned. That does have this curriculum and instruction and student, student focus. And I've had people approach me like, well, what about this, this, and this? I'm like, well, we're really focusing this on student learning.
Right.
And those are things we whether it be budget, well, what about the budget? You want to make sure you're approaching that in a good way. What about capital and buildings and facilities, and you won't find those things in here so much. Because, so I think, I'm just saying this to say that's something I've sort of wrestled with, is the relatively narrow scope, I think, of what we now know a strategic district improvement plan looks like, but that it feels like it doesn't necessarily encompass everything that's on our mind and
Right.
we intend to do in the coming years.
Oh, see, I thought you were sharing the live document, because
I don't have that. Oh, I don't have that. I don't
share. I'll
I
share
don't
with
have
you
the
again.
editable.
Sorry, you all had access to it, so
Okay,
I'll share
thanks.
it again. Sorry about that.
I appreciate this version though, because I'm not
Right.
Oh.
remembering.
Oh,
all of
okay, do you want me
No, as long as somebody's
Here,
looking at the comments.
Yeah. Because we have been seeing like Dr. Chu is typing like.
Right, I'm
very
changing it
detailed,
as we go, and I'm
but
like,
we are the
no
change.
one's seeing that. Okay.
We
Yeah,
try-
so when
we
you
try
said
to get stuff
resources
something.
and practices, I was like, oh yeah.
Right.
That sounds good.
So the next thing we talked about was identify what can be removed, and we had talked as a group about removed or reimagined. How does the committee feel about that?
Did Gloria have a comment on this one?
She said that she did, well, she can speak to that.
Is she on mute?
I'm trying to remember exactly the comment I made. I believe I said I was in favor of adding reimagined.
You did. You said you liked removed, but if everybody
Yes.
wanted to add reimagined, you would be okay with that. But you were, because you were part of those earlier conversations, you knew the spirit of really we're trying to focus on things do have to go.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because the focus is you can't continue to add and add and add and
Right.
add, and then you run into the mile wide inch deep problem, and there's a question of breadth and depth, and so I think remove or reimagined captures some of that.
Okay. So I put removed or reimagined, so that's in there right now.
Can I just make a quick
yes,
comment
please.
around the shift in thinking with this type of document versus a typical
thank you.
5-year strategic plan? The 5-year strategic plan, often when you're developing it, you get into describing what you see as a vision of perfection in the future. And what that ends up not doing is allowing you to prioritize well so that you can channel your energy, your funding into something that's incredibly actionable, because it encompasses everything. And especially when you're talking about 5 years, which is the traditional strategic plan, it feels like it's really far away. And so you're thinking, well, in 5 years, we should be all of this,
Ideal.
wonderful thing,
Ideal
this
place, yeah.
utopian type of school system.
Yep.
And so a document like this really allows you to prioritize, to say, yes, there's lots of things that we're constantly moving and moving forward and growing, but here are the things that collectively we are going to channel so much of our time, energy, because even amongst the committee members, if we encompassed absolutely everything, like in a strategic plan, with X amount of meetings, you wouldn't be able to monitor that. There's just not enough time to actually implement something like that.
I think that's really powerful commentary.
Thanks.
Especially, well, just, I know Gloria and Catherine have been sort of more tied in, so for someone like me that hasn't sort of been along every step, I appreciate that.
Chris, you like commas, and
I
so
do.
my suggestion is actually, instead of adding in the commas that you wanted to add, just to take the phrase "in an age-appropriate manner" and put that at the end of the sentence. So it actually could read under 4.1, ensure that all students and staff are able to explore and understand our local climate roadmap in an age-appropriate manner.
Sure.
But then we don't even need commas.
That is true.
Okay. All right,
would agree
good.
with that.
So we'll move on from there.
I didn't realize this was going to be comma warfare.
But it's a little comma
If you didn't switch it,
This
I would
looks
argue
like
it absolutely needs commas.
This looks like SAT exams. You replace this with that.
So, Valerie, one of your questions was also just about the Universal Design for Learning Framework
Yes, thank
district-wide.
you.
We said year one leadership, year 2, 3 classroom teachers. I think it could also, depending on when we actually identify more information next year, we are doing year 1 this year with leadership, but we're going to be continuing that
Sure.
work as well too.
Yep.
So I think this is year 0, year 1.
Okay, that makes sense.
Make sense?
Yep.
Year 0.5.
Right. And then the last thing was down at the bottom here, right, in 3.4, strengthen Valerie's suggestion was to add an S after relationships. So strengthen relationships and community by utilizing collaborative and restorative principles and practices. That made sense to folks and they liked that.
I mean, it's almost, it feels petty because I know there were so many eyes on these, like as it was worked, right? But the like clunkiness and the rewording and stuff. But I was like, wait, is there a typo there? Is it just missing? Like, I read this out loud and it just, yeah. So I appreciate your openness on that.
No, because we did this in a different way, and one group of people already had eyes on it, and then before everybody else had eyes on it, that's why I kind of felt like it was important that we just sort of talk about
Yeah, no, I think that-
with everybody.
It
But
worked.
that then gives us, I have made every correction that we have just talked about.
Yep.
So whether people are looking at the live document or not, I don't know if there's additional feedback or thoughts, but that I then would present to you as our ISDIP.
And you said you did send us that?
I'll send it to
while
all of
ago?
you again right now, but
Thank you.
I sent it to Chris so that he could share it, but I can add everybody again.
Appreciate that.
Oh, I didn't get it right away. That's why I didn't pop it up. I will pop it up now, though.
Yeah. While that technology things are happening, I'll just say, as someone who looked at this previously, I appreciate the thoughtfulness of fresh eyes on the document.
Yeah.
Because we had a lot of conversations about what we wanted to convey, but it's really important to have fresh eyes look at it and see how it read to fresh eyes who weren't necessarily involved with all those background conversations. So I think all of the changes are very positive and capture all of the spirit of what we intended. So I appreciate that.
Great.
And thanks to everyone who worked so hard on this. It's really nice to see it. Appreciate
We
the.
got a lot of great feedback along the way, so I feel like it's,
And what's the rollout from here?
So if you vote to approve this and it becomes our official ISDIP, then the SACs at each of the buildings have already been prepared to look at it so that they can develop their school improvement plans off of this. I mean, we'll take down the previous one and we'll post this immediately on our website. We're looking to see if we can create some type of a one-page infographic that we might be able to distribute throughout the schools, I think more effectively. Even it wouldn't have all the initiatives, but it would have the objectives and our mission and our core values. And so then I think you'll see how these will roll into the school improvement plans. And then from there, we'll be encouraging all of our teachers to be utilizing all of this information as they develop their goals for next year.
Oh my God, words are so, maybe I'm sitting too close, like it's contagious, the challenging. So as far as like families, right, that aren't on SACs or aren't educators, obviously, but I'm just trying to think like when your next monthly email is, maybe it could get mentioned there. Okay, that would be great. Or, well, I don't know if it makes sense for principal emails, but I'm just trying to think of how.
You can do both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Oh, a motion?
I would take that too.
Okay. Motion to approve the Westford Public Schools Strategic District Improvement Plan 2023 to 2026.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any last discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. Ming Chen?
Aye.
Valerie?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Sean?
Aye.
Gloria?
Aye.
Very nice. That passes, is approved. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we have our plan. We have our
a
roadmap.
plan.
Personnel update
Nothing out
in
of
the packet.
the ordinary in terms of numbers. So you'll start to see more new hires as we enter the spring.
Great. One last thing. We had a Q&A question on Zoom, and we're not really doing interactive Q&A, but I thought it was something worth bringing, or a question worth asking, which is, how does tomorrow's early release impact out of district? Or does it just depend on where they're headed?
Yeah,
Out
it
of
depends on
districts,
whether
depends.
there's, it depends on whether their school, when we have an early release day, that doesn't impact, schedules in other buildings. I mean, in other, people are going to different locations. If we are to cancel, then that would cancel their transportation.
Right.
But, I mean, we'll be interested to pay attention and to look at all that, and I could certainly coordinate with Courtney Moran in the morning as well too. I mean, it'll be interesting. I mean, the North Shore isn't looking at the same type of information that we're looking at, so it depends on where people would be going. I think there might be some schools that will be outright closing that are west of us, in which case that would impact somebody who was going to a different location. And that is communicated normally to individuals.
Yeah, right.
But we'll make sure that we're trying to be as clear with that as possible.
Okay, thanks.
And I'm sure maybe the email or the voicemail says this, but any other change would be the same, like 6 a.m. cutoff or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually said early in the morning, but we live between our 5:30 to 6 window is what we've been able to successfully do so far.
Okay.
Great. Okay, we'll see what happens over the next 12 hours. Okay.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor of adjourning? Ming Chen.
Aye.
Valerie.
Aye.
I'm an aye. Sean.
Aye.
Gloria.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Good night, Gloria.